All right, I believe we are live. It'll tell me in just a second when hopefully it skips over here. Looks like it's starting up the stream. There we go. All right, we're good. It'll take a moment to stabilize, but hello, everybody, and welcome to another interview with the artist. Oh, yeah, getting the apron on. I like it. I am joined tonight by somebody I'm excited to talk to. Somebody who I've liked their work for quite a while, and I've known that we were going to get along from the first time we talked. It's Mr. Jon Ninas. How you doing, buddy?
Hello, everybody. It is not Wednesday, so it's not Warhammer, but screw it. Let's do it anyway. I'm here tonight with Vincey V, the Titan of Gen Con. Vince, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, buddy. I'm real good. I'm real good. It's a great
You're
day.
it really is, and you know what? I'm here to commandeer this interview, Vince.
Uh-oh.
I hate to flip the tables on you, but wow, we just came back from a really big day for a really big weekend for Vince. So how does it feel?
Really good. I mean, obviously, I wasn't expecting that. It was a very close competition, and I mean, I was beyond overjoyed. Really, like beyond overjoyed, surprised when that went down. So I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, obviously, I was super thrilled. It was amazing.
Well, I was impressed, happy for you, and your pieces were amazing. Good to see a fellow Death Guard painter hit the podium. So congratulations.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I mean, look, it's the Nurgle nudge, buddy. You can't argue with the Nurgle nudge in a competition. You just
Right.
get to have so much more fun with them. Like,
You know, it hits that Space Marine itch that judges love, and it hits the Chaos itch. I mean, you get it all.
you
So
get to actually rust things, to weather things, to play with different techniques. You get to use slime. How often do you get to use slime in most of your painting of miniatures? The answer, not enough,
not
frankly.
enough. Not enough. I like to add as many real boogers as possible onto my painting. So it's really the only way to go.
Yeah. I think that anytime you can start getting snot or associated things on there, do it. That's what I say. Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, I had to make sure we hit that because we're talking about art and we need to talk about yourself a little bit too, Vince. So thanks for sharing.
Well, thank you. I don't think anybody wants to hear about me. They're here to hear about you, sir. That's why we're here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you this is interview with the artist number 6, and it's weird because the first 5 I'm like, wow, heavy hitters, and now you have sunk, Vince. You sunk so low.
That's that is just that's this thing. Like I'm gonna have a lot of people over time on this. I talked. It was actually one of the great things about Gen Con was talking to all the artists, and like everybody was like, yeah, sure, we'll come on. So I plan to interview just everybody. What I want this show to be is interviewing artists I like, and I like your stuff. I don't think that's the bar, man. I don't know what that means as far as high and low and quality. That's all nonsense. Here's the truth. All right, you say that. Here's a truth. Are you ready, John?
All right, blow my
You
mind.
okay? You won a crystal brush at the main show before I did.
Oh, whoa,
How about that?
man. When you say it like that,
Uh huh. Uh huh.
yeesh,
Flip it
that
around,
was
right?
right. That was out of my ass, though. Don't expect that ever again.
Well, that's okay. It was a good win. It was a well earned win, and we're gonna look at the piece later.
All right.
So because it is again, as we mentioned, it's rocking that Nurgle Death Guard action. Uh,
Yeah.
I do always keep some extra Death Guard around because you never know. You just never
Never
know
know.
when you're gonna need to paint that Death Guard.
Have you seen the preview pics of the Japanese Space Marine heroes that are Death Guard that are coming out here in September?
I have.
Holy cow!
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend a lot of money to get those ready for Golden Demon. Get those shipped.
Are those are those how big are they actually?
They're standard Plague Marine size.
Okay.
So
It's just the alternate sculpt, right?
yeah, they're completely new sculpt. And most people you probably won't even notice, but as I own every single Death Guard model, I'm just like, woo, woo.
Yeah, those are really cool. And yes, that'd be a hot pick for Golden Demon. Like I said, that Nurgle nudge is real. It's
Right.
real.
It's that fine line, my friend. It's the how long can I wait for the newest model and still get it done in time to hit the show for Golden Demon. That's that fine line I got to discover, right? Because you want
It's
the new hotness.
here's what I'll say. Okay, I was one of the within the shows I was at where I took a demon last year. The person who won the overall, who won the sword at it, they had a Slan lizard man from like the frog sitting on the throne.
I
When
saw that.
when did that come out? 10 years ago? 12 years ago?
Yeah, if we're lucky, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Touche, touche.
but it was gorgeous. It was absolutely
Right,
worth it. Like that was the correct winner, right?
right.
It's just I think in the end, they probably had a bit of a stronger bias. Uh, Hold on, there you go. They probably had a bit of a stronger bias maybe years back, but I don't know. Now, I mean, I don't know if you took like a like something from like 1994, like a metal model, and did it to a high level. Probably not. That's probably
Right.
not.
Yeah,
But
you're working with the handicap there, you know.
right, right. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's possible, but it'd have
Yeah.
to be. You'd have to do some work. Exactly. You're handicapped. You're starting with that strike against you. All right. You've distracted me, John, with all this great
Sorry,
conversation.
sorry.
It's all this fun and entertaining conversation is not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about you.
We're not here for fun.
All right. So I want to talk to you about sort of your journey and what you're doing as an artist. And by the way, I'll put all of John's information where you can find him. You should be following him on Instagram, all that sort of stuff. As since you wore the shirt, I'll make mention of it. Yes, exactly. You can obviously see John on Miniac's channel quite a bit. You show up as a guest on there a bit. Are you guys going to be doing a new season of your podcast soon?
Oh, we want hot takes, fresh news,
Yeah, man.
unreleased. Short answer is yes. We have been busy doing a lot of behind the scenes things. We are rebranding, renaming, getting everything set for a full launch. So we're going to be on all podcast channels. We're going to have a separate YouTube channel for the podcast, separate logo, all sorts of good stuff. And we're going to start recording here shortly. So long answer, yes. Also yes.
That's fantastic. I think you flipped what short and long mean, but that's okay.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
it was great. I really liked the episodes you guys did. I thought they were a good conversation. They were fun. I would listen to you guys chit chat like that about the miniature hobby for hours on end. I think that's quality content right there. So
There's so much out there, and there's so many great content creators out there, and I think we've only scratched the surface of what this hobby will look like. And so we're excited to be a part of that, and I'm excited to dig my nasty little tendrils anywhere that I can fit them.
sure, sure, absolutely. Going back to that Nurgle again.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. Getting them tentacles just out there,
Mhm.
just fitting wherever. All right.
Right.
So let's talk about this. When did you start painting, John? What brought you? How did you get into the miniature hobby?
Sure. The dreaded origin story as
Absolutely. I
has
assume a
been.
rocket ship fell from a distant planet that exploded. A kindly
Hmm.
couple at a farm. That sort of that old yarn.
Right. Yeah. You've heard this once. You've heard it 1,000 times. Um, well, actually, it was a bit of a human evening in late August in Birmingham, Alabama,
Hmm.
1967.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Like all good things, Vince, like all good things, my origin began with Dungeons and Dragons. So I believe that we are of kindred spirit in that regard, fellow dungeon master
You
Vincent.
believe absolutely correctly. Yes.
So I guess I'll kind of give a little montage. So put this to any music you so desire. But ever since I was a kid, I've been an artist.
In my head, it's playing. I had the time of my life. So go ahead. That's what's in my head.
It's like a wedding dance, father daughter
Yeah,
style,
correct,
and
correct. Yeah.
Stepford with paintbrushes. Um, So ever since I was a little kid, always been a drawer. So, and my story is really similar to Sam Lenz's in that regard, that we were big fans of He-Man and painting muscly boys from a young age. But I never, I never really honestly picked up a paintbrush at all until I was in kind of late high school, junior, senior in high school. I took one painting class, an oil painting class, traditional, obviously, as we just call it, painting. Um,
Sure.
but
The
that's
the boring kind, yeah, sure.
right. The painting just like a piece of canvas. Um,
There's no
and
texture on that. Where's the bolt gun? I don't even know what to do with this.
there needs to be far more DACA, sir, in
I
this
didn't have to
membrane.
scrape any mold lines off this canvas. It's ridiculous.
You just have X-Acto blade scraping the side. It's just like, all right, hold on, we're almost there. Um, and I actually went to college to be an architect. I am not an architect today, but that was my kind of consensus of parents saying we don't want you to be a starving artist, and me saying, okay. So
See,
I went
that
to college.
seems like responsible parenting because my
Right?
degree
Yeah.
is in philosophy. So clearly my parents don't care about me. They were like, "Nah, you can just starve. You're fine."
Walmart's always hiring, Vince.
Right. Yeah.
So you'll be fine. So that ended up not working out, and I mostly because I decided what an architect really does was not the fantasy in my brain, and I didn't want to be designing parking structures for the first 10 years of my career. But I really enjoyed design and in the art side of that. Anyway, that has nothing to do with miniature painting, but I wanted to get a little bit out of there. It's a question I get asked: is, what did you do art other than mini painting, right? And so we'll kind of preface that there.
What you're
Um,
saying is in your head, you were sort of like you were picturing like yourself as Keanu Reeves in the lake house, and it just didn't work out that way in architecture.
right? Is that the movie where he's got there's a mailbox that
Yeah,
like goes in the future?
correct.
Why
Yeah.
have why have
Magical
you
mailbox romantic comedy. Yes. And yes, since you first mentioned an architect and it wasn't how I was sitting here and my brain was going, come on, think of the name of the movie. I was just grinding on it, like hoping I could get it in time to get the joke.
yeah, and that's the time of your life just fades to black as I open the mailbox. Oh my god. Yeah, well, I don't know where to recover from that.
So you were
Um,
saying this was your other artistic background before miniature painting,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, but I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for about 20 years. Obviously, in that game, you had. Tell me if this is an Americana thing or if it's just me, just blowing smoke. We had a store in our mall where I grew up, where they sold like weird tchotchkes and like outdoorsy stuff, but they also sold. They were the place that had the glass case with the shurikens and the katanas, and they also had a case filled with pewter wizards and dragons. Are you familiar at all with this kind of store? No.
No, I think you have the only mall in the universe with this store. This is a unique thing.
Here's how I know if that's not true, because in an episode of The Office, Dwight Schrute like famously goes to that store with his overalls and farm gear on, covered in beet juice, and it looks like he's covered in blood. And he wants to buy the wizard with the crystal that's made of pewter, and they turn him away because they think he's a murderer. Anyway, it was at that point when seeing that episode, I realized that I did not, in fact, have that only store. And please, folks, in the comment, if you were familiar with such a store as a child or 20 years ago, 15 years ago, please let me know that I'm not crazy.
People
And
are already responding in the comments that you are correct.
yes,
That they have them in Gatlinburg. Someone said they usually, or Emily said they usually sell tobacco pipes there as well.
yes, they do. Yeah, tobacco pipes
Sure.
made of glass. Right. Okay. So anyway, I'm 12 years old playing Dungeons and Dragons second edition, and walk into that store to obviously look at the butterfly knives and Conan swords, because that's what we do still to this day. So in there, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's these awesome little figures that I could use for Dungeons and Dragons. So spent some ridiculous amount of money for a little knight with a shield, and it was like $36. And now in hindsight, like, GW ain't so bad. So so we used some of those, and I never even considered painting them. I didn't. This was at a day and age where we didn't have, where I lived, any kind of store that sold Games Workshop anywhere near. So I didn't really, hadn't really hit my radar. And so I always thought that was cool. We ended up playing D&D and using the pre-painted figures that Wizards of the Coast produces, and with our group, we probably have about 7,000 of those at this point.
Sure.
So
mainly 6,000 bugbears and then 1,000 others, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they're just like 2 random bar wenches and like 40 dragons that are the size of a lamp, and you're like, oh yeah, because I use these enough. I need more.
Costs like $700 now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's just bendy plastic. So about 2.5 years ago, a guy in my D&D group says, hey, the game store, they have a little painting competition going on, and they're selling this fantasy game figures, and they look like they'd be sweet for D&D. Let's go check it out. So we do, and I go with him, and they were having a store painting competition, and this store did sell Games Workshop, and it was the original Age of Sigmar starter box, the Corn and Golden Boys box.
Gotcha.
And so I saw those Stormcast Eternals, and I'm like, oh, where have you been all my life? The quality of those miniatures just blew me away. So I was immediately like, yep, sign me up. Here's my $5. Give me the mini, and we'll see it later, but that's the Stormcast picture that you pulled. So I immediately went down the deepest, darkest rabbit hole of the internet on learning how to paint. So we had a month to paint that figure, and I watched, I'm not exaggerating, probably 40 hours of painting Buddha in a month.
Sure.
To learn how to paint. And I started, my first thing was, I'm watching Ben Comets, and he's like, and this is how you loaded brush. So that's the first thing I did, was loaded brush. And that was a terrible idea.
I don't know. I feel like you've stumbled upon a genius method of learning to paint here, right? Like, because some part of it is probably, there's a very, the sort of method that I started on, that a lot of us started on, is the whole, like, you base coat, you wash, you layer back up. That's a hard method to screw up. Like, it's a good method for learning because it's very hard to make a mistake. So they do that because people don't get discouraged. It's a very simple A, B, C, D, and people don't get thrown off. But like, realistically, then later, to sort of, often you have to kind of unlearn part of that to get other techniques into your toolkit. Mm-hmm. And I think you just skipped all that first part. You were just like, nah, I'm going straight on to this other stuff. You just jumped right in the deep end of the pool, and it was like, look, either you drowned here or you swim. And hey, congratulations, you could swim. So that's nice. You got that going for you.
Yeah, which is nice. So the first things I learned was loaded brush and wet blending. And so that's kind of what I've done from square one. I'm generally a little bit of a obsessive compulsive person. So if you ask my wife, if I do a thing, I involve myself way too much in it. And ironically, I feel that that's really what it takes to really make big impacts in your painting, right. For miniature painting, and it helped me, I think, make up some ground quickly because I'm closer to 40 than I am 30, and I got to make up some years real quick. so I got to catch up to you boys, and I don't have the luxury of 10 more years of figuring it out. So So that's kind of it. I will say there isn't one small ironic twist in this, is that right when I graduated college and I lived in a bigger city in Minnesota, I lived in Minneapolis, and there was a big game store called The Source, still here to this day. And I just randomly stepped in there one day to check out some new released books for D&D, and they had confrontation miniatures.
Okay, sure.
And if you're that at that time, I was like, that put GW to shame. It was a really weird time in the history of miniatures where it's just insane. And so I bought like 15 miniatures with the intention of learning to paint and never touched them. So I have those still in a box, and I will go back to them someday. But it almost happened about 15 years earlier, but never was to be. So,
Lightning didn't strike. No,
no,
absolutely. Those, yeah, I think that was at a time where GW was really just like resting on their laurels. There was no real competition in the market. And then somebody came up and just, they came for the king. And sadly, it ended up not working out so well for them. But, I guess allegedly they're coming back. Somebody got their molds or whatever. So we'll see how that all works out. So,
yeah,
maybe now people experience them. But now GW's got competition left, right, front, center, up, and below. There's just so many people making great miniatures today. So I think
right.
that's only helped them step their game up more. So
Absolutely. Yeah, there needs to be a healthy competition. And we as the consumers benefit from that. Not only from a quality of sculpt from a painting perspective, but quality of games, right?
right.
We're seeing what traditionally was probably known as for a large contingent of GW games and just kind of being like, afterthoughts not supported. And now we're seeing stuff like Kill Team and Warcry and Underworlds that are legitimate games outside of their two staples. So
Absolutely.
good on you, Duncan. I just say Duncan, even though that's who we all know.
Sure. So somebody asked
Join?
in the comments who are GW's principal competitors. I mean, people making good minis today,
Yeah,
Infinity, Raging Heroes is out there making interesting stuff. Creature Caster makes amazing minis that are, big monsters. Weird and that entire line for Malifaux. They're plastic. The Malifaux line is plastic. They're extremely high quality. I mean, they're fiddly as all get out. It's 72. As I'm sure because I know Scott used one of those Malifaux minis for his piece last year. If you like the idea that in assembling the head of a miniature, you have to glue together 12 different pieces, then Malifaux is for you.
we have found the game for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But they are very nice. So I would say that's just some of the pressure that's out there. But there's of course other stuff.
right. And
Uh,
even Reaper with the Reaper Black now
oh
has
sure.
suddenly entered the game of taking their stuff not only for quantity but quality as well. So there's a lot of people nipping at their heels. So it's good.
I think right now they're probably like still the king, but hey, it's good to have competition. All right. So here's what I'm fascinated by. So let's call it 3 years ago now. It's probably how much time ago that was that you wandered in there and got that Stormcast because that's when that box set was out. A little more than, okay?
Yep. Well, they were clearing. That was the reason for the painting competition
They're
because they
clearing
were
it
like,
out.
you're clearing it out. So it had been, I don't know how much after that, but
Yeah,
anyway.
sure. So this is probably like 2016, right? Because there's 2015 they when this all went down, then 2016 the new starters came out. So they were probably clearing it out about a year later, something like that, right?
Yep.
Let's imagine. Okay. So then you make the decision, what, like a year later, you're painting for a year, and you go, you know what I'm going to do? I've been painting for a year. I've been around this block a few times. I'm going to go to Crystal Brush. I'm going to go to the premier miniature painting competition in North America and take a crack at this. How did you arrive at wanting to compete? Like, where did that transition happen? I understand right away you were competing because that was kind of the origin story.
Yeah.
But what made you then? Did you just stick on competition the whole time and that was always in your mind?
I
Or
never, yeah. Great question. All right. So I started after I kind of dipped my toe in seeing what is Age of Sigmar. I'm a fantasy snob, so I was like, what is this game? And within 6 months, I had 4,000 points of death accumulated, and that's quadrupled since. But I'm also known as the guy in our local scene of Age of Sigmar that is the painter guy, but his army's all gray. So anyway, yeah, my first 4 miniatures I painted were all for local competition. So
okay,
all I did was put 100% in trying to get better in every single miniature. And so I didn't only until honestly maybe within the last Adepticon, so 4 months ago, have I actually sat and like dial it back and try to paint some stuff for fun or not to the give it your all kind of capacity,
right,
which is healthy. And I'm glad I did this. And I'm like, why didn't I not do this sooner? Because it's better for your sanity.
yeah,
to paint for just enjoyment too.
I find you gotta alternate. You gotta alternate. Like for
Yeah.
every competition piece I do, I gotta go be like, all right, now I'm just painting some throwaway thing that's just for funsies. I'm gonna paint a little Skaven hero for myself or something, just some little
Yeah.
fun time.
And you're feeling like you're making progress for an army you want to play too. So that's
Right.
good. I think paint for yourself is good. I also like quickly local people decided they wanted me to paint their stuff. And so I made a whopping like $1.25 an hour because I don't know how pricing works for painting stuff for people at like almost competition quality for their and I'm like, sure, I'll do it for $60. And I spent, I'm not getting 50 hours on it. I'm like, oh my God, don't made that mistake. But um, so I randomly reached out to Scott. Here's my stalker story. So I'd been painting for maybe 6 months and just absorbing. So as much as I paint, I spend a lot of time trying to absorb as well. And
Right.
there's so many resources these days. Holy buckets! We have everything at our fingertips right now to really not have an excuse. So I really tried to absorb, and I watched one of his videos, and I saw that he was at the source. See how I'm tying this in to a story I
It's an
told earlier.
evolving narrative. It's a
Right.
burrito of
Right.
information. Yeah.
We're in block stage right now, and so I see it, and I just like blind dork on the internet email him. This is the email move. And I say, hey, I'm from Minnesota. I like to paint miniatures. You're from Minnesota. You like to paint miniatures. We should paint miniatures sometime. And he's like, okay, stranger. And so I like show up at his house one random day, and his wife's like, why are you letting this person in our house? So we have a running joke with Amber, Scott's wife, that she's still not 100% certain I'm not going to like tear off their faces and wear them around. But
yeah, sure. This is just like a really long con. Yeah.
yeah. Like they don't understand how deep in they are at this point. So I already have I've renamed their dogs and stuff.
You've
They
been
don't know.
slowly collecting their hair to rebuild dolls of them. Yeah, I get it. I know how this goes. Look, we've all stalked people for years to build, mockets of them in our own private torture basements. Who hasn't been there, right?
Right. And hence you've heard of a method actor. I'm a method painter. That's why I'm in this dungeon. If you want to paint in the grimdark future, you must encapsulate yourself in that environment. So I just go into abandoned warehouses, set up my wet palette, and get to work. So anyway, he reaches out. He responds oddly, like a minute and a half later. That was the super creepy part. And he's like, yeah. So we do it. I show up at his house. We paint. We hit it off. I'm like, let's ride bikes and stuff like that. And we were kind of friends ever since. Turned into me really kind of curious about the video side of things as well, and kind of it evolving from there. But he sends out to me, he's like, hey, you need to go to Adepticon this year with me.
Right.
I'm like, all right. And so I'm like, sure, let's do it. I'll go with you. It's in Chicago. That's not a very far drive for us. We'll road trip it. And he's like, caveat is you have to paint something. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you got to paint something for Crystal Brush. And I'm like, all right, hold on. Let me Google Crystal Brush.
I love this. This is the best road to Crystal Brush story I've ever heard.
Right. And I was like, oh no. Looking through like previous winners and stuff, I'm like, no. But you know what though?
You're looking at like Kirill Kanaev's 92mm Space Marine that he like scratch built with the freehand everywhere and the skulls trapped in glass and stuff. Yeah.
It's just overwhelming and completely intimidating. And I said, sure, what the hell, I'll do it because I have nothing to lose, right? I mean, there is literally no reason why you cannot enter something. If there's a competition and you're already going for whatever reason to have fun, to play at a tournament, to just hang out with other nerds, like just enter something. Because if you force yourself to do that, the quality of that piece will impress yourself. I guarantee it, because you will have pushed yourself with more stress and embodiment of pressure than if you're like, I'm going to just paint this orc to the best that I can. Like, it's not the same.
Right.
And so I just said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it the best I can. And so my guy was actually Kit Bash 2, which you probably can't tell. But that's like 5 different Marines that I put together to make it look like a Marine that like probably you could have just made from the box anyway. But so I made things much more difficult for myself. I started my plinth on fire because that seemed like a good idea. So I made a lot of mistakes, but I had a lot of fun doing it. I learned a ton, and I got to really the biggest thing is I got to see how many amazing people are in our community at an event like that. So showed up, brought my little Nurgle boy, and that was that.
And that was history, as they say.
Oh
No, that's
yeah.
amazing. I love that. Here's a fun. Let's since this is a fun time of revelations. Okay, I'm gonna take you back because I want to give you. Yeah, there's a what's the name? Sonder, I think is the sort of esoteric term for the ennui engendered when you realize that every person you meet ever is living just as full and real of an experience, a life as yourself, and are the protagonists in their own story, and you are as unimportant to them as they are to you, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so there's uh I'm gonna give you insight into another human being. Okay, here's my
All right.
reaction because I was in that crowd in that room when you won, right? And like that
Okay.
was a year that like I felt like my sci-fi piece was like strong. I don't know that it was, I don't you never expect to win at Crystal Brush, right? But like
Yeah.
you pulled because you got silver for that, if memory
Yes.
serves, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
which is amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm here now, and I can say I can look at it and go, "That's awesome. I'm super glad. What a wonderful story that is." And,
But it's
at the
bullshit. My Dark Elder should have won.
at that day, I about jumped up. I was like, "What is this? What is going on?" I was ready to throw a table that day when I saw you win. So, there you go. That's it. That's the experience in my head. But in fact, I sat there and went,
Yeah, you slow clapped it like picturing 1,000 ways to murder me slowly.
but no,
Uh,
it really is a great mini, and I do really enjoy it. So, we're gonna look at it here in a minute, because uh, it's such a wonderful tale because you hadn't competed there before, you hadn't been painting that long, but you put in the effort, right?
oh
That's
yeah,
what's important. You didn't just be like, oh, well, let me just paint something and see how it works out. No, like, I don't want people to get that impression. Like, I hope what people garnered from your story is you really put in the work here to
yeah,
get there, right? And I cannot stress enough what you said of like, if there's a competition near you, go compete, push yourself on a piece, try, go, compete, get feedback from the judges. What's going to happen? Like what's in your mind? What's the worst case scenario, right? Like there's
no,
no side
no,
where like people all point and laugh at you and are like, "Oh, look at that crap." That's not what happens ever. Never, ever, 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 ever. Never.
right, yeah, like you're not gonna like put your piece up to the case and like there's a lady that just like is so upset she throws her baby on the ground and is like, I'm out of here.
Right.
What? Okay, I guess that's. And you know what? And I was when I watched your interview with Aaron Lovejoy and you talked about the um that advice that he gave that if you're gonna do it, you you need to understand what you're going against and be willing to put in what it takes to compete at that level.
Right.
And these painters are, I mean, they're my LeBron James, my Tom Brady, my Brad
Absolutely.
Pitt. They're like the people that you're like in awe of. And I act not only that, it was just completely dumbstruck every time I get to meet somebody that I really appreciate their work and see all that they've done, that they're real people. And so I'm like, if I'm going to go and do this, like I need to really do it. And so I'm a competitive person. I think you'll see that amongst um, most, if not all, competitive miniature painters is that you got to push them. You got to push yourself to really say this sucks. Like there's about a 10-hour span in every competitive miniature that you hate it and you
Yep.
hate life. But can you get through it?
Yep. You got to power through that. Absolutely. All right. Speaking of that miniature, let's take a look, shall we? All right. So let me bring
Yeah.
this up here. We're going to look at some of your work. So I'm going to open up this photo. There it is. We're going to cover John's face for a moment with the photo. All
That
right.
is for the best.
Okay. So there we go. I just want to make sure that I'm not covering it with my dumb face. And yes, I think we're okay. In fact, I'm just going
Now
to.
I can't see your screen, so you need to paint me the picture of what I'm looking at and
So yes. So we're
why
starting with your death guard. So this is the
got
front
it.
on shot of him where you can like sort of see his face in that picture. So tell us
Yeah.
about this death guard. We already talked about it a little, but what I want to dig into this. What made you decide? So Scott says, "Hey, we're going to Adepticon. You know, you're in,
Yeah.
right?
I'm in.
You got to paint something. So okay, you have the universe of miniatures to choose from. What made you decide to go with this? What made you decide to go with like this sort of style? And what did you do to get here?
Whew, that is a lot of questions.
Yeah, we go deep on
I
this show.
don't. um, well, I mean, I'm trying to dig back in the memory bank on why I chose that. I think it was Death Guard were still relatively new models at the time. They were kind of the new redone kind of hotness. I was absolutely in love with them, and and the aesthetic and just the things we have already talked about. And I thought, if I'm going to paint something, I know I love these models, so I'm going to do something that I enjoy painting, knowing that I'm going to hit a point where I'm just so frustrated and want to quit. At least I have a mini that I'm excited to paint. So that's probably it at the end of the day.
Right on.
Um, so what was
I
the
mean,
next?
as a quick thought on that, I do really believe that one of the keys to painting competition miniatures, and I stand behind this. I've had people. I know this isn't true for everybody, but for me, it's very true. Compete with miniatures you love,
Yeah,
right? Because when you're trying to power through that midpoint of being frustrated, if you genuinely love the mini, I think you'll do it, right?
right.
Whereas if
Yeah,
you already hate the thing, you're just more likely to put it to the side and be like, you know what, forget it. This isn't worth it.
yeah. It's the same as in any form of art. You can see or feel or hear the passion coming from the artist, and that is absolutely true. Sometimes we don't recognize those symbols when we're looking at a piece of miniature art like this. Is that not specifically mine, but just that if the extra steps, those little tweaks that they went through, the extra brain power to consider, what if I had this light source? What is the story behind the 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 corpse head on his belt? Like all these things. If you're invested in that piece, like you love it, you'll think through those things and come up with a better final product.
Right.
Um, so one interesting thing I'll say about this piece, when I was talking to the judges afterwards, and asking for help on it, I was told that the arms were craned too high up, to kind of kill the sight line to his face.
Right.
And I said, absolutely, I 100% agree. I painted him in sub assemblies. I super glued it on. I let it set, and I was not happy with it, but I didn't want to break the miniature. And Francisco was like, "You break him. You break his arms." And I'm
Yep.
just like, "You what? You what?" He's like, "You break it." I'm like, "Okay, all right. Next time I'll break it. All right. Note to self: don't." He's like, "It's only plastic. You can fix it." And I'm like, "Wow, all right." I knew it was wrong, but I just said, "Well, I'm too uncomfortable with what it might mean," and so I learned something important that day.
That's
Um,
so it's so true and so hard to learn. God, I still
yeah,
struggle with that all the time, right? But he's right. Like if you know it's wrong, if you hear that voice in your head telling you, listen, right?
yeah,
And go the distance. Like don't be afraid to break something to make it better in the end. You've
yep.
got to go the distance. Yeah, no, absolutely.
If you see it, the judges will see it too.
Yep.
So learn that one. I just really wanted to add as much depth to the character as possible. I wanted it to feel real, and I wanted it to have different textures and different surface varnishes. So we have some really matte, we have some more shiny, we have just a variety of the world environment around him integrated in there. So that was kind of my main thing with that. Also, if I'm gonna lose to Ben, I guess that's a good person to lose to.
Yeah, sure.
And in hindsight, I looked in the cases way before, and I'm like, we're sitting in our hotel room, waiting for Judge's final cut, Scott and I, and we're having a couple cocktails, and we're like, he's like, there's a good chance you're gonna make the final cut. I'm like, no way, and I'm like, I'm counting out, like, all right, here's 8, better than mine. Can I squeak through into one of the last 2? And but I from that I was like looking at Ben's and looking at your piece, you had a lot more horizontal influence and vertical influence on your basing that I really think was a big factor too, that I really appreciated. And I saw that was a downside of mine as well. It was a fairly flat surface, but yeah, that was, pretty much just trying to get richness in color and in going up to white, but still make it feel like that armor it feels Death Guard.
Yep.
Was a challenge.
No, it's really good. I really like the weathering on it too. I mean, obviously that's a dominant feature. I switched to a second picture here. We've got which is more the close up and where the upper raised arm is very much in the way of the face, like that
Yeah.
angle of the picture. But it's a really good picture for showing all the, like, on one side, yes, it's a shame it blocks the face, but on the other side, it's awesome that you get to see the belly and all the good weathering and streaking work he did down there. So it's just tough, right? I mean, that's just the downside of two-handed weapons, kind of.
Yeah, you're right, and that was my thought too. Is that was my most proud part of the piece, is that chest plate,
It
and
looks great.
so I wanted that to be showcased to see that those transitions and the weather and going from so bright down to grime. So yeah, there's probably no easy answer there, but
No, it's good. I love the streaks, the small hits on there, but there's little touches to this I quite like. You used your verdigris really wisely. It's so minimal. You kept it in like the recesses where there would be cuts or where water would specifically collect. So I really like that application. You use multiple different colors of orange, which I enjoy, right? So you have your kind of orange mixed with more orange brown. And like the way that your rust is stippled in feels very organic and natural. So I think that looks really, really good. The pink of the tentacle is nice and desaturated, so it's not drawing any attention out of the way. I really like that element of it. The little drip, our tiny drip on the back of your backpack, right? Like on
yeah.
his, over his right, I guess, yeah, right shoulder.
Uh-huh.
That's a nice little touch. Like little things like that, I think really, really help add a lot of character. So I enjoy all those little elements.
Yeah. And I guess the one part that kind of goes through all of my pieces is that I'm young in my painting career, I guess, and that it takes me forever. Like everything is the first time for me, so everything is the screwing it up 4 times before I'm kind of to where I want to be. So that piece was probably 150 hours for one little dude, because I don't know what I'm doing, and so don't let that be an excuse. Don't be afraid to screw up and keep doing it. It's only plastic, right?
That's
So
right. It's only plastic. All right. So now let's look at a lion. So this is your little lion guy who's wearing a fancy coat.
okay, yeah. So here's into doing some stuff for fun and not really pushing myself to the peak. And this also kind of had a timeline on it. This is a Guild Ball character, a mascot actually, and this is actually for an recorded but unreleased video.
Dun dun dun.
So I have my full Guild Ball team painted up, and so I can officially say, Vince, I have painted a team of a game. I can retire. So
You have something playable for a
I have
game. Yeah,
something playable. So yeah, it was fun. It was me trying to work with how do I get something done quick, but also I'm happy with it and not kind of phone it in. that balance. So that's probably about, I don't know, 3-4 hours probably for that duder.
Yeah, he's really nice. I like it. I like the little variations you've worked into like the dirt and your small tufts and grasses and stuff like that. I think that feels really good. You worked a lot of different colors around in there. I'm always, always, always banging on about that. Like until the end of time, that dirt shouldn't just be brown. It should have lots of, it should have different and variation into it. Uh, I like the skin on the muzzle of the lion. I think that looks really nice. And your red looks really smooth. It's a good counterbalance to his like, I don't know, sort of ochre jacket, right? So, and plus,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lion wearing a jacket is just fun.
right. He's just got a blankie on and I don't know, a bunch of gold medals, so he's pretty good at the game, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that, I mean, the key with this was I created my trinity of colors. So it's the red, the really kind of dark blue, and then that creamy color. That's the kind of colors of my team. That I thought that was a good triad: red, white, and blue. You may have heard of those colors before.
not familiar.
And
Oh, the flag of France. Sure, of course. Yeah.
Exactamundo. So and then one thing that I tried with this whole group is to as much as possible minimalize any other colors.
Yep.
Go with the natural colors of skin tones or his fur and his mane, but not be adding a bunch of extra colors for unnecessarily. That's an easy thing to kind of add a bunch of hours to your painting by making things 20 extra colors that you just needed that little bit of lime green in it. Like, no, you didn't.
Right. Yeah, I'm a big fan of minimal color palettes. Absolutely. Like, set yourself to a relatively small number of paints and then go. Right? It's
Yep.
really fun to push yourself around like that because it forces you to learn more about blending and how to get the colors you want out of a limited set of resources. Yeah, it'll make you really understand the nature of your paints a lot better, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't let yourself have a white to highlight. Only give yourself like a glacier blue to highlight or something like
Right.
that, right? And so, okay, that's going to be your high highlight now, and make that work, right? Even with a red or something. So, yeah,
Yeah. You got to have that glacier blue, that ice yellow, and that ivory. And those are three staples.
the sacred triad of highlighting. You got it, absolutely. All
Yeah.
right. Okay, so next up we have said Stormcast that we heard about earlier. So
Yeah. So
this is let me just go ahead and this is your first miniature you painted.
yes. Yep. That's the first miniature that I grabbed in that store and
Uh-huh.
painted for that company. First
Mm-hmm.
miniature.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. Oh, here's the pro tip. It's easy when Ben Comments paints it on like over 8 hours of painting Buddha videos and you just copy it. I'm a
Sure.
tracer. Okay. I just traced it. I'm a 3D tracer. All right. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Vince.
No, I still have some of the early miniatures I painted. I mean, I don't think I have the first ones anymore. I think they basically look like this. It's more or less the same thing. That is to say, if the same thing is flat reds and yellows applied in one thick coat over black primer on a war wagon from 1998, then yeah, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, blame it on Apple Barrel. That's always the key, Vince. It was Apple Barrel.
I no, for me it was the 90s GW Pots in A World Before Shades or anything else when White Dwarf's painting instructions, their step-by-step process you could follow was paint, shade, complete.
It's that simple. Just look at the box art. That's how they
Yeah,
did it, right?
just shade complete. Yeah, so we already heard about this guy. So how but I'm a little curious. So they had the competition.
Mhm.
And so I guess it was like, hey, it's $5. Here's the little duder, and they let you take him home, I assume, and just kind
Yeah,
of
you
work on him. So how long did you have to work on him, and how long did you spend working on him?
so you got them for a month.
Okay.
But I didn't realize I was just introduced to the competition in like the second weekend. So I had like 3 weeks, 3 full weeks. And I painted a lot. Yeah. I mean, that's probably the third iteration of completely painting the miniature
Gotcha.
because I couldn't get the loaded brush and the NMM right in his armor, and it's yeah. So
Were you like
yeah.
stopping and rewinding the video and looking at like each volume he was laying down multiple times, that kind of thing?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, for most techniques, understanding the brush control is something that just watching in a video or even in a class is not always so easy to understand. but like watching it, doing it, seeing why did his go down smooth in transition and why did mine not? Loaded brush is especially finicky with that. So it was a lot of trial and error. So
Nice. Yeah, that's a heck of a first mini. Very well, very well done. All right. So next up we have I have two different shots of your Plague Angel, which I had the which I was lucky enough to be able to judge for Resin Beast here this last year in 2019.
thanks,
So
Ben. I appreciate. I hope that you spent your share of the winnings well. And
I literally had no idea whose this was when I was judging it. What I mean by that is like I knew you were working on one, and I knew Sam was working on one, and there was a third one in there too. Okay, and like the problem was I didn't. All right, that just should say I knew you were working on an entry, and I knew Sam was working on an entry, but I didn't know what you guys were all working on. So there was a couple of really nice miniatures, and I legitimately had no idea whose was whose, which was awesome, right? Because we blind judge, obviously. I have no like we don't know who the painter is when we're judging it. We judged it all, you know, just based on
yeah,
like the number of the entry.
yep.
And like I was vaguely aware of who was entering Resin Beast. So like I had an idea of a crop of people who were probably gonna, be in the first cut, as it were, right?
Mhm.
But it's like I really, really liked this one. You made a lot of great choices. Before I talk about it, and congratulations, you did end up winning first place with this in sort of the main category, as it were, correct?
Yep.
Right on.
Yeah.
I love that you took your base size to the exact limit and then got a little bit screwed by your plinth because it went over just slightly.
Right. Okay. And see, I have a an issue with that. This was funny. A week before Adepticon,
Mm-hmm.
I sent a text to Scott. I'm like, Scott, here's the word for word instructions because I suddenly had a freak out moment. It says these are the dimensions of your base. In your eyes, does that mean the bottom of the rim of the base or the top? And he said the bottom because otherwise you could have the top the right size and the bottom could be the size of like, a dinner plate, and technically you'd be in. So I'm like, okay, I agree because I was like, I think I'm okay, and no, I was not okay.
You were
Uh,
you were a few millimeters over, but yes, it was discussed. Like it came up in the judging. We talked about it, and it's just the plinth. And like in general, the rules didn't they designated that the base, but not the edge of the plinth. So it was more or less universally agreed by all the judges that like that would be the silliest thing in the world to discount somebody who put a lot of work in. You know what I mean? And that was more of a learning moment, I think, where we said, okay, one, we're not gonna. If I was ever judging in a competition where I thought I was going to DQ somebody for 2 millimeters of base size, I would hang up my judge's badge. That's number one, right?
Turn it in.
Yeah.
Turn it in.
Number
Uh,
two, it was like it was a good moment where we're like, okay, we just need to make the instructions kind of clearer and speak to that thing. So next year that won't happen. But this is a great piece. So how did you come to the Plague Angel? Let's talk about this piece and
yeah.
where you went with it on this journey.
So I have at that point when I heard that Creature Caster was doing a competition, I owned 3 of their pieces, all still unassembled, and 3 of the ones that were my favorite. And so I was trying to decide which one I thought would show best. This ends up being, for the most part, this is my favorite model that they make, and it happened to work with some nasty demon nurgly stuff. I mean, that wasn't really the reason. I'm not trying to pigeonhole myself. Is that that's all I paint, but I just really thought that there was a lot of character
Mm-hmm.
to this, and I really enjoyed that expression on his face, and I thought it would tell a story well. So that's why I went with him. In hindsight, don't ever paint a miniature for competition that has that many tiny little feathery wings because that would take you so much time. Oh my
Or
god.
do because the texture you put into the wings is one of the things that distinguished you. When
Oh,
I was judging, like if you like, absolutely, we notice stuff like that. Yeah, as you mentioned, if you see it, the judges see it, and like I will tell you, the amount of time we all spent staring at every one of these miniatures is exceptional. Because we cut to a top 10, and then
yeah.
every one of those, you get as a judge, you get to spend a lot of time looking over the detail of the piece. And, yeah, like the wing texture that you did there was really, really evident. And, that was valued. The things that jumped out to me were a few things. Um, the uh, I really liked sort of the tonality of the skin transition from green to purple. I think that's really nice. Your sort of pustules and bubles, or your Michael Bublés, looked really good. I enjoyed those. I enjoyed the sort of swelling nature of it with a light top. The feathering on the wings is good, but the thing that I really liked was the addition of the internal heat, the internal glow
Yeah.
within the sort of bone spines or whatever. Nothing
Right.
about them says that's how they should be painted, right?
No.
Like, there's nothing, there's no signifier on the miniature that says this is what this thing would look like. And so it was very clearly an artistic choice, and I thought you executed on it really well. Did you look at pictures of like glowing coals in a barbecue when you painted it?
I actually looked at like rolling lava coming down a mountain where the top is cooled and the underneath rolling part is still that molten hot,
Yeah.
and that's what I used. Yeah.
Yeah, because it has a really nice deep red. Like your volume on the red to orange is so small and controlled, and that makes it seem all the more hotter, right? Because you just have this teeny tiny bitty bitty baby area of like white hot, right?
Yeah.
Right at the very edge. And I really liked the execution on that.
Yeah, that was one of those things where I don't know why, or what weird, movie or show or random thing on the internet I saw, and I was like, oh man, that's a cool idea. I should do that sometime. And then I'm like, hey, I'm painting this thing, so let me see if it works. And I liked how it looked. I had to do it 3 or 4 times on some of them because, you're right, trying to get that realistic look of a hot spot was a challenge. But and I thought it made it a little bit, because it felt like doing it just straight up nerdily felt like that's what you expect. I didn't want to completely turn my back to the expectation of the model. I wanted to lean into some of the things that really would work well with it, but I also wanted to have some things that were unexpected, and that was one of them.
Right. Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It broke up that spot well. I liked that sort of tarred wings too, where like the char of them near the heat is
Yeah.
sort of blackened them. I thought that was a good sort of narrative throughout it. It's an unexpected element, which I think I value a lot. Like I like when I look at a competition mini. I talk all the time about the 10-1-1 rule, right, with competing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yep.
your piece should grab the judge's attention at 10 feet. When they get closer to a foot, it should have their interest, and when they look at an inch, something should excite them, right? And this did that in all those ways. And frankly, there was like a top four, I think, of the Resin Beast that all met that criteria, right? That you could stand
Yep.
back from the case and go, oh, what's that over there? And it kept revealing itself to you as you got closer, and this was one of them. So
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, and we can get to a point where I'll tell you what I hate about the miniature here in a moment too. But
sure. We
you
could
can
do
do
that
that
right
now.
now if you want. Yeah, what do
You
you
want to
hate
rip off
about it?
you want to rip off the band-aid?
Sure.
Um, so first of all, I was also planning a crystal brush piece for last year, but going back to our burrito here, the sour cream is that I paint super slow, and we're now like a week and a half till crystal brush, and I'm like, I'm not getting this demon paint painted, let alone finishing my crystal brush piece. So that got put on the shelf, and so I had a book. It is from, I can't remember if it's from some Zinch kit. It's a tiny little to scale like Demonomicon book that's open,
Okay.
and I was going to have the book open and glowing bright pink from the scribes and the ruins on the book, which would then factor into the pink in the portal that he's being summoned to, and then have a like a splatter blood trail of somebody off scene that had summoned him, that had just been like flown and flayed. That was why he's in the cemetery. That is why he's being summoned, and that story actually doesn't get told because I I couldn't get the book to where I was comfortable with it not looking like garbage.
Well, which is another good lesson. Every part of your piece needs to be at a level, right?
Yeah.
Because if you nothing's free. Like I think people oftentimes think like, "Oh, I'll just if I make the base real big or add a bunch of stuff, that's bonus points for me." Woohoo. Not the case, right? Like
Right.
more can be less if the more you're adding isn't all done to the same level as the piece itself,
Yeah.
right? So you always I'm a big proponent of like you want to use the minimal amount of space necessary to tell the maximal amount of story, right?
Yeah. And that is a great tie-in, Vince, to the other thing that I regret, and that was this is how much base space I get. I am cranking every millimeter out of that.
Right.
And so after before the competition on awards, we got to take our pieces out, and I was able to talk to Ben Comets and have him hold it and look through it and give me his opinion. And after staring at it from all angles for about 5 minutes, he hands it back to me and he says, "Technically, it's about perfect." And I said, "Thanks, Ben." And I turned.
Then you just turned and ran. Just a little
Right, yep,
puff of
that's it.
smoke. Yeah.
La, la, la. That's it. That's it. But he says the size of the base is not aiding in your story.
Right.
So if your story can be told equally as strong on a smaller base in condensing the message. And I was like, condensing the message? Holy crap! What am I getting into here? But he's absolutely right. It doesn't. It can tell that story in a more succinct, clear way. Probably even maybe in an oval base to draw that line. But I agree that the base size is probably too big for the piece. But c'est la vie.
There you go. It is still a high quality. Like you have some really nice weathering work and stuff that ties it in on the rest of the good use of the Garden of More kit, the kit that keeps on giving.
Yeah, it
Uh,
does.
the scenery piece released a third time recently. We can't
Right
get enough mileage out of it. So yeah, exactly,
now with snow. Right?
exactly. It's like the Garden of More is like a bad penny. It always comes back. All right. Well, awesome stuff. Let me move this out of the way and we'll go back to you. Hello. Hello, John. You're back. All right.
I'm back. Finger
So
guns.
then the question is, what are you working on? So this year we're changing it up because there's still Resin Beast is going to be back this year. Got Golden Demon coming back, or coming to Adepticon this year. Are you already planning and or working on your stuff?
Yes and yes.
Good.
Yep. My plan is to do both. Ideally 2 to 3 pieces for a Golden Demon and then the Creature Caster. But I fully expect to not realize that. I have an ambitious project for Golden Demon. I want that sword. But
Paint for the best. This is going
right.
to be the most insane year of Golden Demon. I
It's
can't wait. The
yeah.
number of people who are like bringing out all the stops, right? It's going to be full on, and I just can't wait to. I'm going to have to like be elbowing people out of the way of the case all weekend just to see stuff because there's going to be so much to see.
Yeah. As heartbroken as I was to find out that Crystal Brush was gone within a matter of days, that excitement was built tenfold with this announcement. So they didn't let us down. And oh man, I'm so hyped. Yeah, here's something that I want to make really clear. If folks delete or don't pay attention to the rest of this video, is that every time that I sit down and do a piece, I'm completely imposter syndrome. I don't feel like when I sit down there and it's just bare primer that I'm going to be able to make something great, and that I don't have the years of experience to even know where the heck I'm going. I know where I want to be kind of, but I don't know how to get there. And so it's really hard for me to say like, oh, I have this whole thing planned out and I know exactly what I'm going to do, because it's still the first rodeo for a lot of this stuff for me. Every time a competition piece, you see a thing, it's the first time I've done the thing. So I'm excited, but I want to impart that to everyone, that if you feel overwhelmed and that you're not going to be able to make it as good as you want to, you're not the only one. but just sit there and put in the time and put the paint on the plastic, and before you know it, you'll impress yourself. And you get to that fun part at the end where you're just like, yes, this is looking great. Let me do that final 10%, and it just makes it all worth it. So that has nothing to do with your question.
No, but it has everything to do with a great lesson. And here's the thing, I completely agree with you. I feel the same every piece. Every piece. That imposter syndrome is something that I fight with too all the time, right? Because I think you spend so much time looking at, what you see in the world, and I never, as I like people have asked me before, like I never think of myself as an artist, so I get it. I always feel like it is an ever present thing, but you got to just buckle down. You put in the work and you do the absolute best you can, regardless of all of that, right? So yeah, 100% I empathize with that, and completely agree.
I'm good. I'm not alone, Vince.
You're not simpatico, my friend. All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to do some questions from the folks here in the audience. So folks, put some questions over here on one of these sides, whichever side it's on for you, that you can type questions. But first, Jon, I have 3 questions for you.
Bum, bum, bum.
Exactly. All right. Here we go. And we may sprinkle in some other ones too. First off, who is your favorite mini painter that is not yourself?
Vince Vincerella. Boom, nailed it.
There is no way that is true, but
I'm 1 for 1.
This is not a graded quiz.
All right, so there's some pictures out there of me with Ben Comets from Adepticon this last year, and I look like a child that is meeting, like, I don't know, their favorite Disney princess. Sure. Like, I am just absolutely shit-eating grin ear to ear, because that was miniature painting for me, not that long ago, but that's what I learned with. And so I kind of held him to this like godlike standard of what could be possible. And that's so cool in this hobby, is that these amazing artists are so accessible, if whether it's online, whether it's through their Patreon or their YouTube or their Twitch, or whatever, like they're accessible, and they're accessible in real life too, if you go to the convention. So I'd have to say Ben. I mean, I obviously could say Kirill, because we all could say Kirill, and it would be also a good answer. I love Sam. When I was really early in my painting career, I painted, I think, 6 or 8 months. Shortly after, maybe a little bit longer, maybe 10 months. Scott brought Sam to Minneapolis to teach a class, and I went to that class, and I've been a huge Sam fan ever since. I mean, just blown away, and I learned a lot from him, and I really appreciated that, and I still do to this day. So, yeah, and of course, there's
100 more. Yeah, we could absolutely. More. I mean, here's the thing. I'm totally with you. I'm gonna. This isn't one of my main questions, but I want to propose a sub question. 1A, exactly. Yes, hypothetical. You have the chance to go to lunch. You're going to sit down and hang out with somebody for an hour. Here's your 3 options.
Okay? All right.
Option the first, Angelina Jolie. Option the second, okay, LeBron James. Option the third, Ben Comets. Who are you going to lunch with?
Yeah. All right. So will LeBron tweet out all of my new endeavors in the mini painting community that I'm working on to all his fans?
No.
Okay.
No agreement for future signal boosting.
All right. Ben Comets, hands down.
Exactly.
Hands down.
No question, right? Yeah, 100%. Because I agree. That is that like, I don't know what I'm talking about with either of those first 2 people, right? Like, you way to go with that basketball, man. Like, woo.
Yeah.
You were really good in Trainwreck. I'm not sure what I would say, basically. But I definitely would love to hear Ben talk about anything, anything related to anything artistic or otherwise. All right.
Right. I went to his class, the Wizard School class at Adepticon this year. I called it Wizard School. That wasn't the actual name of the class, but I said I was going to become a wizard from Ben Comets. And I sat in that class for like 4 hours, and I didn't even care what I painted. I was just like everything. Every time he opened his mouth, I'm like, that's brilliant. That totally applies to everything in painting and my life. I'm a better person now. And it was beautiful.
All
So
right. Very nice.
question
Okay.
two.
Question two. What do you listen to while you're painting?
I like to hang out with the Twitch streamers, mini painting Twitch streamers while I'm painting. I'm a pretty big lurker there, and I've got to know a handful of wonderful streamers that way, and got to meet a bunch of them in person at Adepticon this year. That was super, super awesome, and feeling like I'm making lifelong friends as well. So typically Twitch streams or podcasts. If it's Wednesday,
I don't know what's next. No, it's Warhammer, obviously. Okay, yes.
right, I get to listen to the old married couple. Um,
Yes. Tom's second wife. Yeah, me. Absolutely. Sure.
just bark about the Bretonians. Yeah, but that's it. That's what I love. That's what I'm doing.
Nice. Nice. All right. What's your favorite color to paint with?
Bloodstone by P3.
Uh,
Bloodstone, beautiful color.
all right. What makes you like it?
It's very versatile. It can be used in weathering. It can be used as a very beautifully rich orange. You'll see it actually if you look at the bases for those Guild Ball group. It's wet blended in there to make a more realistic earth tone. It's a beautiful shading color for creams and tans. It's my jam right now, right? Obviously, I can say dark sea blue and armor brown, and those are also my jam. But that's kind of my new hotness right now is the Bloodstone. I'm on that Sam lens kick.
Nice. All right. Very good. All right. So let's go to some other questions here. Let's see. What is your favorite type of mini to paint? Fantasy, sci-fi, male, female, whatever, whatever. You know, like however you would define that. In other words, I'm not going to tell you the typology. You can
Right.
pick it however you
How
want.
do I define it? I like dead things. If I had to pick one, I play death in all its forms in Age of Sigmar. So if I had to pick, I'd say vampire would be the A number one. You know, I like some maniacal murderers that will also have a pleasant conversation with you. So that's my answer.
Nice. Okay. Let's see. What paint tastes the best?
What paint tastes the best?
Mm-hmm. Don't eat paint,
Uh,
kids. Don't eat paint.
yeah, uh, Tamiya clear.
Oh my god, that is the most toxic thing in the universe. You will instantly die. Do not eat that.
Right?
That's like an
Oh,
enamel
yeah.
based paint. No.
I'm sorry. Vince's YouTube channel was shut down from lawsuits from people eating Tamiya.
Yes, Vince in
Yeah,
no way
don't.
supports the eating of any way of enamel based paints. Do not do it. It is extremely dangerous. There you go.
What tastes the best? Truthfully, um, actually, Vallejo Game Color Air tastes the best.
All right. Nice. Very nice. All right, man. That's all my questions I've got for you. There we go. Anything else
Holy
you
cow!
wanna leave us with before we call it a night?
I got to hang out with Vince. Pretty awesome.
Well,
This is pretty awesome.
it's a good time, buddy. Like I said, we're gonna get you out to Nova here sometime. If nothing else, I look forward to seeing you hanging out at Adepticon. Look forward to seeing the pieces you put together. You're gonna spoil us with. You said you got a couple pieces. How about this? What category? Give me a
Uh,
category of one of them.
Diorama.
Yeah, that's what I like. Taking that big swing. All right,
You want
going
that
big.
sword? You want the sword? You got to get the sword the hard
Ah, I
way.
love it. I love it. I cannot wait to see what you put together, buddy. I know you put the work in. Thank you so much for coming on, sir. Absolute pleasure hanging out with you. And we will absolutely have to do it again. So, to
Yeah,
all of you out there watching, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as a postscript, when that new Death book drops, and it's gonna drop,
Mm-hmm.
if you and Tom need somebody, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. Hey, I am all about a crossover guest. Once you're in the family here, right, where you've been on, it's just like now you're in my Rolodex, because
Circle of
that's
trust.
circle of trust. I absolutely keep a physical Rolodex where I write down your email. No, I don't. I'm just saying, like, that would be insane. Who would do that? But no, I would love to have you on for that. That would be super fun, dude, to hang out and talk some AOS death. So there you
All
go.
right.
You're consider yourself tapped for said release. Boom.
Yes.
All right,
And then
pre-scheduling. All right, everybody. For all you out there watching, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Jon. And as always, we'll see you next time.